Hi, and welcome to week 3. I'm Dr. Brian Babcock, and in the background you'll see I've changed locations again. This week we're in a hotel in Raleigh. The week title, or the work that we're going to be doing this week, is Understanding Old Testament Narrative, Part 2. Now, I want to be able to continue, because narrative is such a huge part of the Old Testament. I want to be able to continue our study and really dive into a couple of different assignments that will explore different parts of the narrative process. This week we have 3 goals. First, to analyze the narrative components of plot, dialogue, time, and characterization in a narrative text. Now that's a big one this week, and you're going to do a paper on this, which is we look at the Bible as authoritative from God. Get that. But we also need to explore each story or narrative on its own accord. What is the author, the human author, be it Moses or someone else who is inspired by God, but what are they trying to communicate by the way that they have crafted the narrative? How much dialogue is there? Is it just the narrator talking, or is it the characters talking? How are we learning the information? What are we being told about what they're wearing, about their location, about how they travel, how they communicate? What are we told about their inspiration? What is their purpose? What is the characterization? This week we're going to look at the fact that in any narrative, be it secular or biblical, characters can be agents, i.e., they really don't matter. They're just there to help move the process along. They can be rich or fully developed characters, and these are characters that we understand how their mind is processing information, and they are central to our story. And then there are other types of characters who may be fully developed in one area and not fully developed in another. Bathsheba is a great example of that. So I want to start to have us take a step back and really look at narrative, not just as Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, and so forth, but what is that process? What is the story trying to communicate? And then the second is to create a personal interpretive methodology for biblical historical narrative. And by that, the book is going to teach you certain things. I want you to begin to ponder what you're going to do after this class when you're actually exploring a narrative for preaching or teaching or some other Christian environment. And then finally, to analyze the sacrifice of Isaac text. And apply the hermeneutical meaning of a contemporary or to a contemporary situation. So we have one paper assignment and one discussion this week. So for the paper, it's a narrative analysis of the sacrifice of Isaac. Applying the information you learned in Folkelman's book, complete a 4-page narrative analysis of Genesis 22, verses 1 to 24. So I am not wanting an overview. I am wanting an in-depth analysis, and that means that there might be a word study that you choose to do. There could be, and there should be, sections on each type of analysis, be it plot, dialogue, and so forth. And I want outside research where you create or look for other sources and other academic sources that are supporting your analysis. So a 4-page narrative analysis of Genesis 22, 1 to 24. Be sure to include a discussion of various aspects of plot, character, time, dialogue, and others. Also be sure to include a conclusion where you bring your findings together and apply the findings to a modern context for biblical ministry. And then please note the example of narrative analysis provided in the course lecture, where I've created a little bit of a mini paper for you as to some of the things I'm looking for and how to complete this type of analysis. The lecture is entitled The Use of Plot, Character Development, and Dialogue in Narrative Texts. This is due, as with all of our written assignments, next Monday at midnight. So next we have a discussion post, and I want you to explain the purpose of the text, Genesis 22, that you just analyzed, which begins with the phrase, "After these things, God tested Abraham." The narrative concludes with, "For now I know that you fear God, since you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me." Now, this sounds like God did not know whether Abraham would or wouldn't sacrifice his own son. And it's easy for us to say, oh, well, God lives outside of time and he knows, and yet God's the author of this text. And God led Moses to write this story. And the story begins with, "After these things, God tested Abraham." Well, why would he test Abraham if he knew how Abraham was going to respond? And why at the end does the narrator tell us that God says that now I know? So you may want to dive deeper into some of the words, know, fear God, but also really look for what is the purpose of this text, and how do these phrases communicate God to us, and what should we understand about God based upon them. So in your opinion, what is the purpose of the test of Abraham? Did God know the outcome in advance, which seems to be contrary to what the text is telling us? Or if he didn't know, what does that tell us about God? Be sure to support your answer with both academic and biblical support. I'm hoping we can get into some good discussions about who is God and what is he like, and how does this passage help to inform that, or provide some depth to that. Each student should interact with at least 2 other posts, and that is, again, for B-level work. I am expecting at this level of class that we're getting into discussions, and there are a few students who have done a fantastic job with that, where they're entering into true discussions and not just trying to get a check mark out of creating 2 comments or even more comments. But I would really like for you guys to spend a few minutes in dialogue with one another to create a sense of community and get to know each other as well. It's not just all about academics in those discussions. A few folks have shared some personal information, and that's gone well at trying to create community in the discussion. So I want to encourage you, if you have not participated in discussions at a deeper level, that this is a good week for you to do that. And if you are one of the ones who have been doing it, I want to commend you and say I appreciate the work and the time that you're spending to create dialogue on these discussion posts. Your first post is due on Friday at midnight, and final posts are due on Monday at midnight. As always, some last thoughts. Please put your name in the file name of the assignments. Feel free to either email me and set up a time that we can chat. I'm happy to have calls for office hours to be able to discuss anything that you need, because I really want this to be a successful class for you and a meaningful class. So thanks for all the hard work. I look forward to seeing how you interpret this text of Abraham and Isaac, which is so central to our understanding of God. Have a great day.